I started playing the trumpet as most people take up instruments at fifth grade. So I was in the fifth grade, and I remember. I don't remember if my parents bought me a brass trumpet or if they rented one. But I had a brass trumpet that I played for a couple years. Was probably a average to less than average player, and then I strongly remember before my seventh grade year, my parents bought me a silver trumpet, a Bach Stradivarius, and I also remember about that same time I had a band director that I didn't like very well, so I wasn't sure I wanted to keep playing trumpet at that point in time, and I was getting ready to go into high school, so it probably would have been the eighth grade year then, and I guess the reason I didn't like him was because he was pushing me really hard. He thought I could be a better player than I was, so that kind of thing. And ended up moving up to like fourth chair, which was a lot better than I'd been before. And then um, when I went to high school, the band director there was a gentleman named John Christian, and this was in Clarksburg, West Virginia, is where I grew up. So John Christian is known quite a bit now around those parts for his trumpet playing and his own band that he has based out of the Fairmont area. At least he was then, out of the Fairmont area. I don't remember the exact timing, but somewhere along the way in early high school, I ended up first chair trumpet. And I always remember that was kind of the first time I felt like I'd accomplished something, that I could be I don't want to sound arrogant, but like I could be the best at something. So really had very little to do with music and playing trumpet. It was more about self-esteem, and turned out to have a very strong relationship with John Christian, a very powerful mentor in my life. He was a guy that taught me to not half-ass anything, and he would tell me that to my face. We had a little system where someone could challenge you for your seat in your section, and it was either my junior or senior year. This young upstart trumpet player wanted my seat, and so he would challenge me as often as he could, which I think was about once a week. And so we would have these trumpet battles, and I think Mr. Christian used that process to communicate to people that you have to be prepared and you have to practice, and you can never rest on your laurels. So again, these were things that at the time they seemed like they were about the trumpet, but as I look back on those years, it was a lot more than that. So I think the biggest thing, we didn't have a marching band at Wesleyan or anything like that, so we had like a concert band you could play in, but I chose not to do that. The main thing was a jazz ensemble. It was really good. And probably the most fun thing for me was I was a good enough player at that point in time that I could play lead for the jazz band, but we had such magnificent players in our jazz band, and they were better true jazz musicians, so they could improv much better than I could. I just never could learn how to improv. I was much better at show me the music, show me the notes, and I'll play them very well. Whereas many of the guys that were in the trumpet section with me, yeah, they could do that probably as good, if maybe a little better than me, but it was their ability to make stuff up and do improvisation that made them better. So the fun part of that for me was I kind of became, I don't know the right word for it, but kind of the backbone, I guess. I was just kind of the guy that got the chart played while they did their things. They got to be the front and center soloist type of things. And we had a killer trumpet section. In fact, I know the lead trumpet player, Kenny Rittenhouse, he made music his career. And he's in the President's Own Band and based in Arlington, Virginia. So he plays for a lot of dignitaries in Washington, and also has had a couple jazz albums of his own. And I think at least two other players in that section made music their career. So it was pretty strong. And the nice thing about playing the trumpet in college was the tours that we did. We would go on spring break tours every year, and I went to a lot of places I wouldn't have gone to otherwise around the country. And when we did those tours, we didn't stay in hotels ever. They had host families that would take in the players. So we'd play at high schools and we'd stay with families that had high school kids. So that was a totally different thing too, which had just a different way to meet people, experience things you wouldn't otherwise experience. And that group also did a European tour. It's actually the summer I was getting married, so I did not participate in that. But it was an incredible adventure for those folks. So kind of another example of what music opened the doors for them to do that kind of stuff. So, but I still play trumpet today. Not nearly as often. We have a group in our church that plays 3-4 times a year. So we'll get together and practice 4 to 6 weeks, and then play for our church. So that's a lot of fun. It's kind of become a tradition, I guess, at the church. Certain songs that we play and certain times a year. So it's a good outlet for me and a good way of, I think, just remembering all those things that I just talked about and the influence that they've had on my